Welcome to the Debrief. I'm here with the Hill's editor-in-chief, Bob Cusack. Hey, Bob.
Hey, Robbie. Happy to be here.
Great to have you here. Well, let's get right to it. There's new reporting from the Hill detailing why President Biden's repeated call for an assault weapons ban could actually be a political winner. There have been 600 mass shootings in the U.S. in 2022, reinvigorating calls for the ban, even though Congress doesn't have the Democratic supermajority it needs to pass it. To my mind, that would mean it's probably dead, but
Yeah.
you think there's been some changing movement on this?
I think with the changing movement, it's all about 2024. Reinstating the ban is popular with, of course, Democrats as well as independents, but the Republican base doesn't like it. So it's not going to go anywhere in the House. But because it's politically popular, I think Biden's leaning into this because he knows he's going to have to deal with a House Republican majority that's not going to do it. Now, will the Senate pass it? No, even though that's going to be also run by Democrats because it's filibuster. But I do think that this is something that if Biden does run, and we don't know for sure if he's going to, I think you're going to hear a lot about this in 2024, especially, unfortunately, these mass shootings continue.
Well, and that's the point. Yeah, my recollection is that public interest in doing something or having greater gun control or assault weapons, et cetera, more background checks, whatever it is,
right.
It peaks immediately after a very lamentable tragedy, and
Sure.
then kind of fizzles out a little bit over time.
Yeah, I remember Congress has passed a gun bill that focused on mental health, and we had the ban on bump stocks.
Yeah.
But what's happened? We continue to have mass shootings, and that's why I think the left is on board with this. The Democrats are united. So anything that divides Republicans, because you can pick off maybe a Republican here or there on this, but very few, because listen, if you support this, and we've seen this on gun votes before, and you're a Republican, you could get a primary.
Well, interestingly enough, it used to be picking off the other way, right? It used to be that some Democrats
Yes.
would vote against stricter gun control because they were in red areas, they were personally more conservative, or rural areas. I mean, even Bernie Sanders was at least on paper. I'm not sure how it came to the votes necessarily all the time, but he had articulated more support for gun rights, which was described as kind of a noticeable standout in his progressive agenda.
Right, and
But he's from Vermont.
He's from Vermont. He's as he's run for president, he's shifted on that. But at the same time, that's where I think that the politics of it. Will any of the Republican contenders in 2024 support this? I doubt it. So that's why it could be a political winner. But at the same time, it does fire up the Republican base. I mean, They get fired up by any vote or any op-ed on this, and there's a strong reaction. So this is not going to happen, but you're going to hear a lot about it, I think, over the next couple of years.
Well, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is gearing up for his fight for the speakership. This is fascinating. McCarthy received the nomination from more than 80% of the House Republican Conference. That sounds good, but according to Congressman Andy Biggs, 20 members of the conference are, quote, pretty hard no votes. On the Democratic side, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries has been selected to lead the party next year. Jeffries has been highly critical of McCarthy, but said he's ready to work with any Republican serious about helping the country. So the Republican dynamic here is really fascinating.
Yeah.
McCarthy is supported by the overwhelming majority of Republicans, but overwhelming majority is still cutting it pretty close because they only have about a 10-seat advantage. Now, I was reading the Hill story on this, and you can tell me more about this because I actually didn't even know this. To win the speakership, it takes a majority of the votes cast for someone.
Right.
So people voting present.
Yes.
Explain.
Yeah. If they're voting present, then it doesn't count toward the overall count. However, reporters, including ours, have asked these Republican holdouts, are you going to vote for present? And they're basically saying no. But McCarthy's going to have a very busy holiday season because, remember, this is early January where they have this vote. And, of course, his take is, listen, if you play games with this, who knows what could happen? Because if you don't get 218 on the floor, then it goes to a second and a third ballot until you get somebody who gets this. Now, that hasn't happened in decades. But it could happen in early January, and because of their narrow majority, I think some of these guys like Andy Biggs and Matt Gaetz, I don't think they're going to bend. They're going to have to get some type of huge concession from McCarthy. And I don't know what that is.
Well, they haven't made clear what they want. I mean, they're not saying if what they really want is some concession. They're playing this pretty close to the chest, right? They're saying, no, we don't want McCarthy. They're not saying we want X, Y, Z. They're saying we don't want McCarthy.
Yeah.
So behind closed doors, maybe they say, well,
yeah, I mean,
we want to be able to bring amendments to...
Yeah, tweaks to the rules package, which is very inside baseball. But it's not like they've said, okay, if you give us this rule change, we'll vote for you. They haven't said that. Yeah. They've pressed for stuff, but they haven't said, if I get this, I'll vote for you. So this is a huge challenge for McCarthy, and he's having an audition right now, and he's trying everything he's doing. He's leaning into crime and the border. So this is a Republican-based type of strategy. I thought he would get there. I'm not so sure he's going to get there. But then who else?
Right.
Who else? There's no other viable contender.
Right. That's the interesting thing. And so many of these holdouts are, I think you would say, they're the kind of Trumpier people, or more personally loyal to Trump, more pro-Trump. Even
Absolutely.
some of that, I think Matt Gaetz, even still communicating a very pro-Trump. Not quite ready to move on to Ron DeSantis. One of them, several of them have made that point. Marjorie Taylor Greene, however, very much in that camp, personally very loyal to Kevin McCarthy. They've struck up a pretty good relationship, it sounds.
It's a key ally for McCarthy right now, and I think that's one to watch. Can Greene convince these other conservatives to get on board? And remember, the Speaker does not need to be a member of Congress. There was even speculation that Trump would be Speaker. That wasn't going to happen 2 years ago. It's not going to happen now. He's not interested in that. Obviously, he's interested in his old job back, but there could be, if he doesn't get the votes, some kind of crazy ideas. Ben Carson a few years ago was mentioned as a possible. Maybe people can get behind him. I mean, it is, and those talks were real. So there's going to be some creative talks over the next several weeks.
Former Congressman Justin Amash, who is a Republican, switched to Libertarian, is no longer in Congress, has offered to serve as a centrist speaker and will let members of both parties. He's a lot of idea. He too was very upset about the kind of dictatorial command that previous speakers wielded, and said he'd let everyone bring amendments to the floor. So
he's a unique cat, and he's willing to do the job. But I just don't think he's going to
happen. But it was a great suggestion. Fascinating. All right, thank you so much, Bob. That's it for us this week. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.